The act of procreating, giving birth, is an act of rebellion and freedom from the oneness. Freedom to act in the degrees of lower nature and higher nature, or higher self. We want to connect to oneness, but we want individuality at the same time. And that's what sparks in individual vessels provide. At the same time, you play in this simulational game of life or world, and you follow some forms of structure or ruling. So that's why even in this realm, you struggle and fight to maintain some form of freedom while you're in the vessel. And some people interpret sin or those aspects as a form of freedom as well, and form of liberation. Because if we all in oneness, it could be interpreted as just being in a have or have mentality, or doing the same things, or just operating within the oneness. And I think you can interpret that the oneness even wants some aspects of itself wants to be free from itself, which is probably why it fragmented itself, so it can have freedom from itself, from being just one way. But some would see, or aspects of itself would see that as an opportunity to become oneness, and that's a good thing, while some of itself does not. So that's why there's a struggle when it comes down to being the oneness, returning to the oneness, versus just having individuality while in the flesh, while spiritually connecting, or just meditating to oneness of your own sovereignty of your own right, or when having temporary connections and still having the individuality. So basically, your cake and ice cream. So anybody will understand that people have preferences, and that you may want to birth a child and others may not, for whatever reason. And people choose to do that as a form of a bondage, or they're aware that it's a bondage still. In some way, you have to fight for it. You have to fight for it here, but at the same time, spiritually, people fight for freedom from the oneness too. And as much as we want to interpret or spiritually interpret oneness as a good thing, or God or whatever is a good thing, some don't, because that also means reuniting with the God or with the oneness is also a form of bondage for some, because they don't want to reunite with the oneness, because that equals, from their perspective, it equals to bondage, because that's not freedom, because you are adhering to one way of being, and they want their own individual being. So you will have to just deal with it. Deal with the struggles of, you have a choice. You deal with the struggles of maintaining individuality and balance within the flesh, or you choose to become one again with oneness. And it's up to you and the individual sovereign person. Know that there is consequences for choosing individuality in the flesh versus reuniting with the oneness. There's the suffering, there's the fighting, or the fight to maintain that individuality, liberation, and sovereign right, versus oneness. Not saying you can't have peace either way, because both, you can find peace, but the difference is that when you actually reunite with the oneness, there is permanent peace. It's just a permanent um, salvation, permanent escape, peace. But for individuals, that's when you decide to continue to fight against the oneness, or fight against reuniting as one, or God, whatever you want to call it, the divine spark, one. There is permanent peace in that as well, because they say that they think that that's salvation from God and salvation from the oneness. They feel like it's hell to be reunited to the oneness. It's crazy. It's crazy. It could be hell from both perspectives. So that's why some recommend, spiritually recommend, balance, because that's where you find freedom and peace. But I can't help but to think that you'll find the permanent salvation peace when you connect it to the oneness, versus individually being placed into flesh, where you encounter all these different things. Not saying you can't find peace, I'm just saying it, it makes more sense. But I understand why it's not desirable for some at the same time, because you want to be your individual self, because the spark, part of the reason why the spark split itself. So it's a struggle, and I understand.